Welcome to Happy Times and Places, the flimsiest of premises to have a man waffling on throughout an entire episode of Doctor Who without having to bother to even get any mates round to bounce off. I do have a mate in this, but he's pre-recorded his contribution, saying his favourite things about his chosen story.
Hello Toby, and hello everyone. My name is Richard Bignell, the editor of Nothing at the End of the Lane, and this time we're going to watch together part 3 of Pyramids of Mars.
Well, welcome everybody to part 3 of Pyramids of Mars. I've had a break since parts 1 and 2, but I know that Richard Bignell, my guest, will have some excellent thoughts and choices for part 3, which, as I remember, is an episode I'm going to be spoilt for choice with. But let's see what happens. Welcome, thanks for listening. I'm recording this the day after Doctor Who's birthday. I didn't get much to do Doctor Who-y, 58th birthday, because these are released with quite a gap. If you're not a patron, if you are a patron, it's frighteningly close because I'm running out of content. So that's the difference between patronage and non-patronage. 1, you get it by the skin of my teeth, and 2, you get it probably could even be after I've died. But no, as I record this, but it's not topical, so it doesn't matter, I'm not going to go, oh, Marcus Scarman is as mean as the current Home Secretary, Priti Patel. And then by the time you get to this, there's been another 3. Well, we can but hope. Sorry, I don't normally do politics, but I think she's quite grotty. Now, I do politics. I'm very political, but not in Doctor Who podcasts, because it can distract us from what we're about, which is about celebrating Doctor Who. I'm not really actually that cheerful or positive a person either. So I'm doing that for these podcasts too. But anyway, let's not get bogged down in all of that. Part 3 of Pyramids of Mars, which Richard Bignell is going to choose his thing at the end of this episode. And I'm on episode selection on the DVD of Pyramids of Mars. Well, by the time you get this, it's probably going to be available in microchip form. But for now, I want you to press enter in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's a great story, this, isn't it? Pyramids. It's, although I'm going to let you into a little secret, I'm slightly worried about what happens when we get to episode 4 for reasons I will explain during episode 4, which is probably one of my least watched in its proper form episodes ever of Doctor Who. I think I've illuminated you on that in episode 1 when talking about how I acquired it and my main watching of it. Stephen Harris, of course, does not exist. I know a couple of Steve Harrises. I don't think I've even mentioned Sarah's costume, have I? Which is terrific. And good job she was wearing it, considering when they landed. And have I talked about the mummies? Nick Bignell, the leader mummy, sadly died relatively recently and had a good career. He played Patrick Cargill opposite Alfred Molina's Tony Hancock. I may have mentioned this in episode 1. I can't remember. This is the problem when I take a break. Kevin Selway was in hospital with a Facebook friend of mine, and Melvin Bedford. Yeah, I think I have mentioned this. It's okay. We're warming up. Tom Baker is waspish in this. Animated human cadaver. I love that dialogue. But and credit to Michael Sheard, because he's contrite and he's nervy, but he's not a coward, and he's not annoying, because these characters are sometimes. And it's funny because I remember when we had the book and my brothers talked about the Doctor helped by Lawrence Scarman and all that sort of thing. I remember it being a real shock in my childhood to discover that Lawrence Scarman, who I thought was the sort of main good guy, died. As that seemed to me a thing that didn't happen in Doctor Who. I was obviously less experienced of the show. And Gabriel Wolfe, he does so much whilst sitting in a chair. And he's quite sweet in the making of this, isn't he? Which I haven't seen for years, but I remember him saying, well, I thought everybody would just, I thought Bernard Archard was the main thing that everyone would like. And actually, Bernard Archard is superb. And when I first, watched this and had this on VHS, it was definitely Bernard Archard's performance as the animated human cadaver. He seems to take that as his cue. Is a really good piece of work, and he was cropping up as the pathologist in Bergerac. I remember being quite pleased to see him, and in fact I actually taped little clips of Bergerac because he was popping up in it, and I like to have clips of Doctor Who actors in other programmes because I didn't have that much Doctor Who, so I would watch these sort of just bits of Bergerac with Bernard Archard and Ian Marter, or Forever Green with John Abineri, and just watch those, and it would be like, well, I suppose it's quite close to watching Doctor Who. God, the things we did. I mean, this will sound like gobbledygook to anybody from the modern era where things are just... I wonder where those two lads are who are stand-in for Lawrence and Marcus in the photo. Probably long dead. If not, I shall interview them. I assume it's just a stock photo. They might even have been long dead then. Yeah, Bernard Archard, very good. I wrote to Bernard Archard and was surprised to get a letter back. I think because he always played these sort of stony-faced, big-jawed... Well, it's because that's what he looked like. But if they weren't villains, they were quite sardonic characters. And I saw him very much as a heavyweight actor. I thought, well, there's no way he'll write back to me, and he absolutely did. And he sent me a signed photo, but his photo was from the 60s. I don't know if that was the one he was hawking about to casting directors, but anyway... So I have a signed picture of Bernard Archard. It's quite surprised to discover his partner of many, many, many years actually was listed in, I think, last year's Equity Journal as being dead. James Belchamber, the actor. And they were long partners for, I think, 50 years. And did ultimately get a civil partnership when they were allowed. Oh, poor old Lawrence Scarman. He's and of course Michael Sheard was so well known to my generation as Mr. Bronson from Grange Hill, who was firm and stern and mean, and I think, as I think I've said before, we sometimes underestimate just what a good actor Sheard was, and he was almost too nice. He diluted his cachet by making himself too available. And also, he wrote about 73 volumes of autobiography, which I think is a trifle too many. The first one is very interesting. I mean, it's very lovey and conversational. Here's a tip. If you're writing a book, don't go, oh, I've just remembered. What's the name of that actor? I'll tell you what, I'll go and ask my wife. I've just popped downstairs and asked my wife, and we don't need any of that. We don't need, just say, I remember working with the actor, and say his name. I don't need to find out how you discovered his name. Maybe in a sort of rambling documentary where you're looking for something, but in a book, I don't need to see a process. This is a great episode, and it's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because this is green and sunny and breezy, and yet there's a doom-laden atmosphere. It's partially because of Tom Baker's very highly charged with, dark star energy. And Elizabeth Sladen, even though she is, she is subtle, and she has these lovely little humorous little ticks that she does, she's taken it absolutely seriously. I mean, that shot of Tom Baker just in the hat looking up at the camera absolutely loves him. And I love the fact that she sort of she gives as good as she gets without it being a spike, without it being an annoying row, a bit like, like Perry and the Sixth Doctor sometimes got a little bit too much sort of bickery. The Doctor's quite sort of terse and bullish with her, and she's like, yeah, all right, and she sort of dilutes it, but without sort of taking it on too much. It's a great dynamic. Hammer and chisel, one wrong move and you'll never know the time again. It's full of so many good lines, this. Stephen Harris, Robert Holmes, you sure did know how to write Doctor Who. And that's a fairly straightforward video effect, but it doesn't look too hokey to me. Sometimes try and, but this shot here, this stuff on film out here could be broadcast today, I think, with no you wouldn't change very much about it at all. Okay, there's the inside of a thermos flask, but that works for me as well. In fact, probably kids today don't know what the inside of a thermos flask. Oh, you've probably cancelled them. Sorry, I'm trying to be an edgelord. But no, you don't. You don't know what a thermos flask looks like. I shouldn't think young people. My children don't. They lecture me on world politics. Can they make a cup of coffee? I don't think so. Anyway, that's a story for another day. That's a delightful scene. You know, and I like the light on the sarcophagus, especially as it only sort of flickers across the blue stripes and not the grey ones. That's a neat effect. Yeah, that really works. I assume that's some sort of front axial projection, and it's working on the bit of the set that's painted that particular colour, which is I like effects that don't particularly draw attention to themselves until you, as I have done, then just think about it too hard. I don't think that's going, oh, look at this wild thing. It's just a nice piece of attention to detail. He's a very memorable villain for one that's in 2 and a bit episodes, who largely sits on a chair. He's a wonderful. All life is my NAA. All life shall under the reign of Sutek the Destroyer. It's great, isn't it? And I love that speech, but there is something about the addition of the word fish. I don't know, and it's perfectly right. Why shouldn't he say that? But I do sort of think, yeah, animals, reptiles, the fish. What fish done to? And I don't know why I select fish for. It's just quite a funny word, isn't it? Fish in that context, in a way that the other words aren't. But fish slightly undermines it for me. It doesn't. I still think it's absolutely brilliant, and it's superbly delivered, and it's a glorious summation of the character and what a force for evil he is. But it's just something about the word fish. But it's a great speech. I was fortunate enough to interview Gabriel Woolf on stage for. I love their banter in this scene. For the 50th anniversary. I think I got. Did I have Gabriel Woolf? No, because I had Julian Glover, Michael Kilgariff, and Stephen Thorne. But I did have Gabriel Woolf too. Maybe I had the 4 of them. And he did that, so he got out his bit of paper and did that speech. And I had a little chat with him afterwards as well, when he was reading his book. And he was very nice, and he's got a wonderful voice. He's married to a dame, an opera singer. I love this. Sweaty. I don't know anything about Gelignite and Sweaty Gelignite, but Tom Baker, I think Terence Dix slightly explains it in the book. He goes, Gelignite, when it's been da-da-da, is sometimes called sweaty, and then but they don't worry about doing that here. I love, and it's a beautiful shot. She's towering above him, just looking gorgeous. Oh, and then she does the sneeze, and he does the look, and it's not a sort of hokey, out of place. Because sometimes a sort of comedy moment in a bit of sci-fi, especially at the end of an episode, you're like, oh, come on, that's a bit hokey. But that's totally organic. It's part of their relationship. She knows what she's doing when she says that line. He knows what he's doing when he reacts like that. He sort of knows that he's being a bit of a sourpuss, and it's really, really layered. And they don't have to point that out to us. It's just clear in the chemistry. Oh God, does it happen this soon? Oh, so you've just had that lovely bit of sort of unforced, natural comedy repartee between the Doctor and Sarah in a scene that I used to play over there. I used to love. God, I used to watch this all the time, the VHS. And then the camera zooms in, doesn't it? Yeah. Kudos to Paddy Russell, by the way. The atmosphere that she infuses this with, and the space that she gives her actors. And this is, and look, and the lovely makeup on Bernard Archard. He's got a slightly a sort of silvery sheen, to suggest the sort of the dead flesh the putrefaction held at bay, you know, but it's still sort of icy. It's like living rigor mortis, if you like, and the red eyes. It's a very subtle makeup job, but it does the job. It's you know, there's a cold, clammy deathness to him, and he's got a brilliant face anyway. Look at those lines under his eyes and around his, you know, he's that granite jaw that he's got. And this is a brilliant scene. You know, 2 guest actors absolutely selling it. You know, and it's not what you normally get. You know, you don't do this at drama school. A sad brother trying to talk the corpse of his other brother out of malfeasance. And he's not too whimpering or cowardly. He's trying his best, Sheard. I think it's a really lovely performance from Michael Sheard. Oh, and you don't see the smoke here or anything. It's just you don't actually need it. It's all in the acting. I took an off-screen photo of this. Please, oh, it's so horrible. And that's the last we see of Lawrence, who, you know, looked like he was going to be, especially when he was sort of bounding about the TARDIS with that sort of public schoolboy, you know, burpy laugh that he did, because he was so excited by the time machine. And let's not forget, he invented the electromagnetic telescope, how many ever years early it was. So, you know, he could have been, you're the stuff of legend, and instead he sort of dies a rather sad death at the hands of the brother that he refused to accept was dead. You know, he did outlive his brother, really, but had the rather unsatisfying coda of seeing the corpse of his brother he outlived walking around killing his friends. Oh, it's not a nice story, is it? That's a brilliant image. The three mummies outside the rocket. I mean, I don't really buy it as a rocket. It's a triangular tent, but it doesn't really matter because it's actually quite a nice design, and the whiteness offset against the sort of grey sentinels, the grey patchwork, mummified, quilted sentinels. Oh, bless him. And he's rocking away. And this is a grim scene as well, isn't it? Because she touches him and he falls off, doesn't he? He's dead. Yeah. Oh, and the way that the Doctor sort of recoils, it's not an emotional recoil. It's a sort of, oh, that's the dead thing. And he's got a grimness. He's not being unpleasant. He's about to get unpleasant though. But oh, that's so inhuman. And you know, if another Doctor did that, I'm not sure I would let them get away with it. But Tom Baker he started the thing so maudlin with the walk in eternity. It's like he's carrying the weight. It's like he's like somebody's put a turd in Gordon Brown's Horlicks. I mean, he's got that sort of demeanour about him. And he's not being cruel here. He's not rubbing it in. He has the pragmatism of somebody that you know knows the vast scale of the potential death that's available. You know, I prefer this to the scene where Jodie Whittaker's Doctor didn't know how to talk to a man that talked to her about cancer. Do you know what I mean? Because this seems to me to have more sort of doom-laden resonance about it, and it's there, and the point that it makes while it does it tells you something about the Doctor. And I know that other scene did that as well, but I just didn't think that one worked. Whereas this one does, and Tom Baker's, the fact that you sort of sense that Tom Baker has you know, heard the echoes of hell in his ears, and has had to learn to shut them out. And that he's troubled by it, but he's not gonna, you know, he's never gonna share that. I'm not sure. I mean, it's one of the first things Doctor Who ever did, isn't it? Put Ian in the Dalek, which I'm not a great fan of, and we've had it recently with Peter Capaldi in Davros's chair, which I'm not a great fan of, and now we have Tom Baker dressed as the Mummy. Which sort of emphasises that they're men in costumes, and they're such good costumes, and they've gone to such a length to not having an entirely human shape by having that sort of breastplate and the sunken eye bits, which of course Sarah has replicated. How has she done that? Well, because she's using the same costume that Nick Bignell or Kevin Selway or whoever is wearing on Tom Baker. And I know that Tom Baker did not want to wear the mummy costume, and presumably said, "Look, no, let one of these lads do it." And Paddy Russell said, "Nope, we'll be able to tell it's you," which is a sort of compliment, but I don't know if Tom wasn't after compliments. He was after not having to wear a mummy costume. So I know that was a bone of contention between them, and I suspect, and it seems that Paddy was not diplomatic in the way that Tom needed her to be. Love that, and I can feel, and the noise it makes, I can feel that burning my fingers. That's he must have asbestos fingertips. Well, no, of course not. He's a corpse, but I totally buy that, and I don't know if it burnt a hole in the carpet, but it gave me the impression that it did. Isn't smoke brilliant? That sort of smoke, dry ice smoke. I mean, it was just having that in a scene was exciting for me as a kid. And Sarah with the gun. This seems quite unlike Sarah to me. And I remember the image on the book, which I know is taken from a still, taken from the story, but the image on the book cover of her with the gun seemed really harsh, and it wasn't a particularly flattering picture of Sarah. I remember thinking, oh, she's not, I was very young. Sarah's not very pretty, whereas of course Sarah is extremely pretty. So it wasn't a great picture of her. And I remember looking at that and going, and my brother's going, yeah, we don't like Sarah. She screams all the time. She does not. But I was so in my head implanted by my brothers and sister that Sarah Jane was a bit naff because she screamed a lot. That, I remember not having particularly high hopes for Sarah when I started, discovering past Doctor Who, because that had been the lie that I had been sold. And so it was only after watching a couple of Elizabeth Sladen ones that I went, I think I've decided that my brothers and sister don't know what the hell they're talking about, and she is amazing. And I think she's rarely out of sync with what each scene needs. She turns her hand to everything. She does that light comedy. She does the banter. She does the keeping it serious. And now she's doing sort of gutsy. I don't buy the fact that Sarah is a crack shot, but I buy the fact that Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah in this scene is a crack shot, if that makes any sense. So she's been asked to do something that is slightly out of character, and I've got a hint of a feeling that she may have queried that as well. So I bet Paddy Russell had a slightly annoying day. Both of her leads querying. I could be wrong about the rifle, but they both. And it's interesting that even if they are doing something that they're not happy with, they both actually do it with absolutely the right level of intense drama. To make it work and to make it, and I didn't really query it first time around. It's only because I'm so familiar with this. I even love that shot, just the shot with the three mummies. I don't quite buy the Doctor as you would think that somehow Sutek and Marcus Scarman are in somehow mentally simpatico with their servitor robots, but okay, especially if he can do that. If in a split second he knows to hold an explosion, why doesn't he know they're over there? But anyway, it's fine. I'm thinking about it too much. It's just I think this did always slightly niggle me, and you can sort of tell it's Tom Baker. He does move a bit like Tom Baker. I think Paddy Russell had a point. I'm slightly annoyed with myself for using people's Christian names. I think if you're talking about a piece of work, you talk about Baker, you talk about Sladen, but and I write for Doctor Who magazine. I don't like Doctor Who magazine using people's Christian names when they're doing an interview or a review or whatever, because I think if you're writing a serious article, you need to be objective and you refer to people by their surnames. We're not a gang; they're not our mates. And when people refer to Pat, I don't know Patrick Troughton. He's Troughton. But this is just my own snobbery. I'm not saying I'm not going to be remotely consistent about this. But my feeling is I should always say the person's surname. But I have met some of these people. But none of them are my friends, so I should be able to And as I say, yeah, when somebody calls Hartnell Bill, I think, what are you doing? He's Hartnell. But that's if they want to call him Bill because they consider him their friend, or because they want to call him Bill, they can, and it's none of my business, and I don't actually really care. But my preference is to do. I think that shot of Tom Baker isn't that on the back of an annual somewhere? That exactly the same angle as him moving through the sarcophagus. I don't know why I did that. It's just because I cringe a little bit. I know people listening back to this when I say I'm talking about Tom or whatever may make me sound quite sort of conceited and boastful, and I can understand that because I do think that when I hear people refer to somebody they don't really know who is their hero in a television program by their Christian name. But I have been lucky enough to do quite a bit of work with him recently, and I do call him Tom. But that's something I tend to do only once I've had permission or I've done something a few times, and I have done stuff with Tom a fair few times. Great model shot. I love a model shot. Although the flames are too big, aren't they? Yeah, the flames look slightly too big because obviously they're the size they are on a model which is bigger. I don't know. They just seem slightly out of shape compared to the thing that they're on. Now, is that the clip? Because I remember at the end of Who's Doctor Who, the documentary, it goes, "No, Doctor, you shall not die yet," and then it goes into. But of course, that's ending the documentary, saying, this is the end of the documentary, and you shall not die. You will carry on, and there'll be more Doctor Who. So I was never quite sure where the cliffhanger was, and I'm still never am quite, because I've as I say, I've rarely seen this in this form. So yeah, it's when the Doctor, and he does do that, doesn't he, Tom Baker? He's very good at painful grimaces. He sells pain very, very well. John McGlashan, he died this year. Excellent film cameraman. Christine Rusco is she's still about and is a very, very good designer. She's done a great job of this. Female designer, female director. That's very interesting. So look. Ooh, I love the bit in the hut. I love the whole dynamic with Elizabeth Sladen and Tom Baker. I love Gabriel Wolfer-Sutek. I love Bernard Archard as Marcus Scarman. Love the dialogue. Animated human cadaver. Maybe he sneezed. Like, what is it, mending wristwatch with a hammer and chisel? But I think I'm going to go, because I love the character actors and I love the guest stars and I like, the little guest stories we get, and part of the fun of Doctor Who is, rooting for the guest characters who may well die, which you kind of know that the Doctor and the companion won't, and it's it's that guessing game that you play of will they get through, and I think you invest in them. When it's done well, you invest in them. And certainly in part 3, get somebody like Lawrence Scarman dying. Oh, but the Doctor's reaction to that as well is great. That Inhuman, which is so against my view of what the Doctor is, and yet it totally works because it also ties in with my view of what the Doctor is, which is an aloof, detached alien. But he's also supposed to be my friend, and I didn't see that alien stuff in him so much when I was a kid. I didn't think, did I? I don't know. I didn't analyse it. But Tom Baker is so good at that detached, doom-laden alien stuff. And it's because and yet he, as I say, he does it without coming across as a git. But no, my thing is the two guest actors facing it off. It's a beautiful scene. It's really well acted. It's really desperately sad. You care. You even care about Marcus, and he's been dead since the first scene. It's the scene between Marcus and dead Marcus, live Lawrence, soon to be dead, soon to be joining their number. Yeah, it's the scene in which both the Scarman brothers are finally conjoined in death. It's really well done. So I'm going to choose that. What's Richard Bignell chosen? Oh, knowing him, a geographical location, because that's his thing. No, I bet he's choosing something very good, because he's been playing along very nicely. So this is his part 3 best thing. Here we go.
Now, I know you love your actors, Toby. So for part 3, I'm going to focus on a performance. For this episode, I would really like to sing the praises of Michael Sheard as Lawrence Scarman. Now, Sheard appeared in Doctor Who 6 times during his career, in The Ark, The Mind of Evil, Pyramids of Mars, The Invisible Enemy, Castrovalva, and Remembrance of the Daleks. But I think that Lawrence Scarman is by far and away his finest performance. I think that Lawrence is a wonderfully rounded out character, so brought to life by Michael Sheard. I absolutely love how proud he is when the Doctor asks him to demonstrate his Marconi scope. The childlike glee and enthusiasm he shows when he gets to enter the TARDIS. His palpable sorrow and sadness after he panics in the lodge when trying to save his brother, resulting in the failure of the Doctor's plan to break the link with Sutekh. But above all, the absolute pathos in his final scenes, where he finally confronts Marcus and desperately tries to break through to whatever might be left of him by showing him a photograph of them as boys, leading to his sad and pathetic whimpers as his brother finally turns on him, leading to his on-screen death. Now, there are some really fine acting performances going on throughout Pyramids of Mars, but I think Michael Sheard gives an absolutely standout performance that really lingers in the memory.
Oh, what a lovely tribute to a wonderful actor and a fine servant to Doctor Who. I was lucky enough to meet him once. Unfortunately, I then got a bit drunk. Don't drink anymore. It might not have been my finest hour, but I was lucky enough to meet him, and he was a good guy. And he was great with the fans, but he was, and this is, I think, sometimes forgotten because he was so familiar, is that he was a really, really good actor. I like all his performances. I think he's lovely in Castrovalva as well, and I like Dr. Summers. But no, this is his best. This is his best turn, and yes, Richard was right to celebrate that. I got a little bit of that because I picked a scene that he was in. So do I get half a point? Do I get a quarter of a point? I mean, I'm not going to win, so I will leave it in your hands. Your hands. Oh, those were Michael Sheard's last words in the episode, so they'll be mine as well. I shall leave the conclusion and the fallout of Richard and I's confluence or not in your hands. Well, thank you ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Richard Bignell, who can be found on Twitter at Nothing Lane. I'm very grateful to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, Barry Platt, Matthew Newton, Dave Owen, Melvin Pena, Keith Pirrie, Jonathan Potter, Richie, Dylan Rees, John Rivers, Jim Sangster, Matt Sawyer, Keith Say, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Nick Temple, Sabrina Tirabassi, Reynard Toombs, David Trainier, Apollo C. Vermouth, Gary Wales, Adam Westwood, Rich Wiggins, Michael Williams, Andrew Willis, Andrew Wilson, and Stephen White. The music for these podcasts has been specially composed by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork is by Dylan Patterson. So you want to be a patron? Well, maybe you do. Maybe I've tempted you by the way I read those names out. Well, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for as little as £3 a month, you can get early releases, bonus material. I've started to open up my archive of little bits of video that I've taken at little, behind the scenes places and things like that. But I've also put on some extended comedy stuff there and some exclusive podcasts that are just for patrons. And in fact, somebody had the suggestion in the monthly AMA, that is also a patron exclusive. AMA means Ask Me Anything. I'm down with the kids and know the lingo. To maybe start doing commentaries on other shows, which I will do, I think, but that will, again, only be for patrons. Oh, yes, only the elite core can know what I think of an episode of Cleopatra 2525. I've still not seen a whole one, but I'd quite like to. And more, perhaps importantly and usefully, Quatermass, of which I do know quite a bit and I've done a lot of research for. And probably somebody suggested Blake 7 Gambit. Why not? So you can pop along to Patreon for all of that sort of stuff. As I say, £3 a month, although you get a 10% discount for signing up for a year. Or you could go to Ko-fi.com. There's no goodies there, but it's not a commitment. What it means is that if you enjoy one of these and think I sound particularly hungry, needy, or in need of a metaphorical coffee, you can put any amount into my metaphorical cyberspace coffers just to say thanks, or to say that you've liked it, or whatever. It's the modern way of doing things. I feel terribly awkward at asking and mentioning it, but if I don't, people probably won't. And it's this sort of level of professionally rendered obsequiousness that is what really needs money paying for, isn't it? I thought I'd actually started this coda quite well, but it's sort of run away from me a little bit. Not to the extent that I'm going to re-record it, though. I think I'm giving it a certain ramshackle charm. That's how I think I'm going to package it. So go to Ko-fi to, really put the sheen on this golden material. But if you can't or don't want to do either of those things, then that's completely understandable. I am just grateful to you for listening. But if you are a listener and you enjoy this stuff, please go to wherever you get your podcasts from and give this a 5-star rating and perhaps a couple of lines of review, because that will just help other people find it, and then they will listen and hopefully like it too. I am actually a professional comedian, and do that old-fashioned thing called live comedy. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m, Manchester, Excess Malarkey Comedy Club. It's been going 24 years, and I have been the resident MC since day one. That's a career trajectory, but it's a good night, and it has all the best comics in the land playing for as little money as possible. It's run on a non-profit making basis. And so, you get bang for your buck on a Tuesday night, and it's at 8 p.m. in Manchester. And if you can't do that because of geography, inclination, or other reasons, you can enjoy it online at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey, where we have an online version. It's not the live stand-up show, but it's comics performing live from their living rooms. But they're comics we get from all around the world, and we do a little bit of an interview and other stuff, audience interaction, because on Twitch you can heckle via the medium of typing. So that's a new thing we started doing in lockdown, and it proved very popular. So we're carrying on during real life, but only on the first Sunday of every month. Twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. Hopefully see you there. So rumour has it Ashley Knight has started listening all the way through, right to the end. So there's a growing movement of underground listener to the enders of this podcast type people. I suspect it's going to get an increasingly less rewarding thing to do. Early on, I might have been able to come up with the odd witty coda, but I suspect the novelty's probably worn off by now. But anyway, hello Ashley, if you're still listening, joining the others, you know who you are.